The sound of a door slamming echoed through the grand house, causing Zara Odell to flinch as she scrubbed vigorously at a stubborn stain on the marble floor. The year was 1883, and working as a maid in the Westfield mansion in Calico, California, had never been her dream. But with both parents buried and no family to speak of, Zara had few options at 22 years of age. "Girl," Mrs. Westfield's shrill voice pierced the morning quiet. "You've missed a spot again. Honestly, what am I paying you for?" Zara lowered her eyes, her knuckles white around the scrub brush. "I'm sorry, madam, I'll do better." The elegant woman towering over her scoffed, the feathers on her elaborate hat quivering with disapproval. "See that you do. Mr. Thompson is arriving for dinner tonight, and everything must be perfect." As Mrs. Westfield turned to leave, her husband appeared in the doorway, his gaze lingering inappropriately on Zara's figure. The young maid felt her stomach turn as she had so many times before when Mr. Westfield looked at her that way. "My dear," he said to his wife while his eyes remained fixed on Zara, "perhaps we should discuss young Miss Odell's position here. I'm not certain she's meeting our standards." Zara's heart sank. The Westfields were her third placement in 8 months. Each previous position had ended similarly, with Mr. Westfield's wandering eyes and hands forcing her to flee in the night, leaving behind what meager wages she was owed. That evening, as Zara served dinner to the Westfields and their guest, Mr. Thompson, she could feel the tension in the air. Mr. Thompson, a balding banker with yellowing teeth, kept glancing at her with the same predatory look she recognized all too well. "I must say, Westfield, you have excellent taste in staff," Mr. Thompson remarked, his eyes never leaving Zara as she poured the wine. "Yes, though this one requires discipline," Mr. Westfield replied with a meaningful look that made Zara's blood run cold. Later, as she washed dishes in the kitchen, Mrs. Westfield appeared, her face tight with anger. "Mr. Thompson has made a generous offer for your exclusive services," she said coldly. "Pack your things. You'll be moving to his residence tomorrow." Horror washed over Zara. "But madam, I cannot." "You can and you will," Mrs. Westfield snapped. "We've already accepted payment. Consider yourself sold." That night, with trembling hands, Zara packed her meager belongings into a small cloth bag. She couldn't go to Thompson's house. She'd heard the rumors about the girls who went there. Some were never seen again. In the pre-dawn darkness, Zara slipped out the back door of the Westfield mansion with nothing but her bag, $3 saved from her wages, and a heart heavy with desperation. She had no plan, no destination, and no hope, just the knowledge that staying meant a fate worse than uncertainty. The streets of Calico were quiet as the mining town slept. Gold and silver had built this place, but for women like her, there were few honest ways to survive. The saloons would hire her, but Zara knew what would be expected. The boarding houses wouldn't take a woman alone without references or substantial payment up front. She walked toward the edge of town as the sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the dusty Main Street. The stagecoach wouldn't arrive until noon, and she couldn't afford a ticket anyway. With nowhere to go and the certainty that the Westfields would soon discover her missing, Zara felt tears sting her eyes. A noise from the nearby stables caught her attention. A tall man with broad shoulders was saddling a horse, his movements confident and practiced. His hat was pulled low, but she could see a strong jawline covered with a few days' worth of beard. Something about his presence made Zara pause. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up. His eyes, a striking blue even in the dim light, met hers with a questioning look. "You all right, miss?" His voice was deep, with a slight drawl that marked him as not being from California. Zara quickly wiped her tears, embarrassed to be caught in such a vulnerable state. "Yes, I'm fine, just waiting for the stagecoach." He glanced at the position of the sun, then back at her small bag. "Stagecoach ain't due for hours." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You running from something?" The directness of his question startled her. "I'm simply seeking new employment opportunities," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. He studied her for a moment, and Zara felt as though those blue eyes could see right through her carefully constructed facade. "Name's Adam Whitaker," he finally said. "I've got a ranch about 10 miles east of here." "I'm Zara Odell," she replied cautiously. Adam secured the saddle on his horse before speaking again. Saw you working at the Westfields, nasty piece of work, both of them, Zara tensed. You know them, know of them. Old man Westfield has tried to buy my land 3 times. He patted his horse's neck. Looking for work, you said, Zara hesitated. A job offer from a stranger could lead to a situation as bad as the one she was fleeing, yet something in his straightforward manner seemed trustworthy. Before she could answer, shouts erupted from down the street. There she is, stop that girl. Mr. Westfield and 2 other men were striding purposefully toward her, their expressions thunderous. Panic seized Zara. Adam assessed the situation in an instant. Trouble. They claim I stole from them, Zara said quickly, the lie tumbling from her lips. But I didn't, I swear it. Without hesitation, Adam stepped toward his horse. Then it seems you need a ride more than advice. He mounted in one fluid motion and extended his hand down to her. Decision's yours, Miss Odell, but make it quick. Zara looked at his outstretched hand, then back at the approaching men. The Westfield's influence meant no justice for her in Calico. With her heart pounding, she grasped Adam's hand and felt herself being swiftly pulled up behind him. Hold tight, he instructed as he urged his horse forward, away from the shouting men and toward the rising sun. Zara wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid warmth of him as the horse accelerated to a gallop. The town of Calico quickly fell away behind them, along with everything she had known. She had no idea what awaited her at the end of this desperate flight, but for the moment, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in a very long time: hope. The desert landscape of San Bernardino County stretched out before them, harsh and beautiful in the early morning light. Adam Whitaker rode with confidence, guiding his horse along trails that weren't immediately visible to Zara's untrained eye. She clung to him, aware of every jolt and movement as they put distance between themselves and Calico. After an hour of hard riding, Adam slowed the horse to a walk, allowing the animal to recover its strength. You doing all right back there? He asked, glancing over his shoulder. Zara nodded, though her legs ached and her hands were stiff from holding on so tightly. Yes, thank you for helping me. Don't thank me yet, he replied, his tone matter of fact. We've still got a ways to go and I don't know your story, though I can guess some of it. She tensed slightly. What do you mean? Westfield's got a reputation. This isn't the first time a Maid's left his employment in a hurry. He paused, then added, and it isn't the first time he sent men after one either. Zara fell silent, unsure how much to reveal. Finally she spoke, her voice barely audible over the sound of the horse's hooves on the packed earth. The Westfields arranged to sell me to Mr. Thompson for purposes I couldn't accept. Adam's back stiffened slightly beneath her hands. I see. The words were clipped and Zara could sense a simmering anger in them. After a moment he continued, then you did right to leave. Thompson's another snake, forecloses on folks who can't make a payment even when they're a day late. They rode on as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Zara's mouth grew dry, and as if reading her mind, Adam passed back a canteen. Drink, he instructed. Desert heat'll take you if you're not careful. The water was warm but welcome as she took careful sips. Why are you helping me, Mr. Whitaker? She finally asked, returning the canteen. He was quiet for so long that Zara wondered if he'd heard her. Finally, he spoke. My sister was in a similar spot once. No one helped her. The simple statement carried the weight of old pain. I'm sorry, Zara said softly. Long time ago now. He adjusted his hat against the sun. My ranch isn't much, simple place, but I do need help, especially with my housekeeper laid up with her broken ankle. It's honest work if you want it. Zara considered his offer. She had few options and even fewer resources. What would be expected of me? Cooking, cleaning, looking after the place. Nothing more than that, he said firmly. I'll pay you fair wages, give you a room of your own with a lock on the door. The mention of the lock spoke volumes about his understanding of her situation, and Zara felt a small knot of tension ease in her chest. That sounds acceptable. Around midday, they crested a small rise, and Adam reined in the horse. There it is, he said, nodding toward the valley below. The Whitaker ranch spread out beneath them, not as grand as some, but substantial enough. A sturdy 2-story house stood at the center, weathered but well-maintained. Several outbuildings, including a large barn and what looked like a bunkhouse, were arranged nearby. Fenced pastures held cattle and horses, and in the distance, Zara could see a creek cutting through the property, its banks lined with cottonwoods. "It's lovely," she said honestly. Adam made a non-committal sound. "It's a work in progress. My father started it, I aim to finish what he couldn't." As they approached the ranch, a dog came bounding out to meet them, a large, shaggy animal with a friendly demeanor. Behind it, an older woman hobbled onto the porch, supporting herself with a crutch. "You're back earlier than expected," the woman called, her eyes curious as she noted Zara. "Had cause to hurry, Mrs. Henderson," Adam replied as he dismounted, then helped Zara down from the horse. "This is Miss Odell. She'll be helping out while you recover." Mrs. Henderson assessed Zara with kind but shrewd eyes. "Well, thank the Lord for that. These men have been making a mess of my kitchen." She extended her free hand. "Martha Henderson, housekeeper and cook, though lately I've been more of a spectator than anything useful." Zara shook the offered hand, feeling immediately at ease with the older woman. "Zara Odell. I'm very pleased to meet you. Come inside, child. You look like you could use a meal and a rest." Mrs. Henderson turned her attention to Adam. "And you've got Tomas waiting to speak with you about the north fence line, something about missing cattle." Adam nodded, his expression turning serious. "I'll see to it. Miss Odell, Mrs. Henderson will show you where you'll be staying. We can discuss particulars this evening." As he led his horse toward the barn, Zara followed Mrs. Henderson into the house, aware that she was entering yet another unknown situation. But unlike her arrival at the Westfields, she felt no sense of dread, only cautious optimism. The interior of the Whitaker home was simple but comfortable, with solid furniture and clean, if well-worn, furnishings. The front room opened into a dining area and a large kitchen that showed signs of a man's attempts at cookery. "Gracious, what a state," Mrs. Henderson muttered, surveying the unwashed dishes and flour-dusted countertops. "Mr. Whitaker means well, but cooking isn't among his talents." Zara set down her small bag. "I'd be happy to clean this up right away." Mrs. Henderson waved her off. "There'll be time for that after you've rested. You look dead on your feet, girl." She led Zara up a narrow staircase to the second floor. "Adam's room is at the end of the hall. Mine's downstairs off the kitchen, now that my leg's giving me trouble. This one will be yours." She opened a door to reveal a modest but clean bedroom with a single bed, a chest of drawers, a small writing desk, and a window that overlooked the ranch. As promised, there was a sturdy lock on the inside of the door. "It's not fancy, but it's private," Mrs. Henderson said. "It's perfect," Zara replied, emotion suddenly thickening her voice. After months of sleeping in servants' quarters with no privacy and recently fearing much worse, this simple room seemed like a palace. Mrs. Henderson's expression softened. "You've had a hard time of it, haven't you?" When Zara didn't answer, she continued, "Well, you're safe here. Adam Whitaker is a good man, the kind who does what's right because it's right, not for show or reward." "How long have you known him?" Zara asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Since he was born," Mrs. Henderson replied with a smile. "I worked for his parents for 30 years. Saw him grow from a mischievous boy to the man he is today." Her face clouded slightly. "Saw him through some dark times, too, after his sister and then his parents passed." Zara thought of what Adam had said about his sister and felt a pang of sympathy. He mentioned his sister briefly. Mrs. Henderson nodded sadly. "Abigail, lovely girl, got caught up with a man who promised her the world and delivered only misery. When Adam found out how she was being treated, he went after the man, but it was too late." She sighed heavily. "That was 8 years ago now. Adam was just 22 himself." The revelation that Adam was only 30 surprised Zara. His manner had suggested someone older, perhaps due to the responsibility he carried. "How terrible," she said quietly. "It changed him, that's certain." Mrs. Henderson moved toward the door. "Rest now. There's a pitcher and basin if you want to freshen up. I'll call you for supper." Left alone, Zara sat in the stillness of her new room, feeling the tension of the morning slowly drain away. She moved to the window and looked out at the ranch, at the men working with the cattle in the distance, at the mountains that formed a protective boundary around the valley, at the clear blue sky overhead. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to consider the possibility of a future that wasn't shaped by fear. Whether this place would truly offer her that remained to be seen. But as she watched a hawk soar high above the ranch, Zara felt something unfamiliar stir within her, the first tentative wing beats of freedom. The days that followed settled into a rhythm that Zara found both comforting and rewarding. She rose early each morning, prepared breakfast for Adam and the ranch hands, and spent her days assisting Mrs. Henderson, whose broken ankle was healing but still required rest. The work was demanding, but unlike her position with the Westfields, she was treated with respect and gratitude. A week after her arrival, Zara was kneading bread dough in the kitchen when Adam entered, his boots dusty from morning chores. "Morning, Miss Odell," he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "Mrs. Henderson still resting?" Zara nodded. "She was up late last night with her pain, so I told her to sleep in." She continued working the dough, aware of his presence as he leaned against the counter watching her. "You've made quite a difference around here," he said after a moment. "Place hasn't run this smoothly in months." She felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. "Thank you, I'm glad to be useful." "More than useful," he corrected. "The men are singing your praises too." "Tomas said your biscuits might be worth getting shot for." Zara laughed, the sound surprising her. When had she last genuinely laughed? "I hope it doesn't come to that." Adam's expression softened slightly, and Zara noticed how it transformed his face, making him appear younger and less careworn. "Me too." He set down his cup. "I've been meaning to ask, do you ride?" She shook her head. "I never had the opportunity to learn." "Would you like to?" When she looked uncertain, he added, "It's practically a necessity out here, and besides, you haven't seen much beyond the house since you arrived." The idea was appealing. "I would like that, yes." "Good. We'll start this afternoon if you can spare the time from your duties." After he left, Zara found herself looking forward to the riding lesson with unexpected eagerness. It wasn't just the prospect of learning a new skill, it was the chance to spend time with Adam outside the routine interactions of the ranch house. That afternoon, she met him at the corral, where he was waiting with a gentle-looking mare. "This is Daisy," he said, patting the horse's neck. "Steadiest mount on the ranch, perfect for beginners." Zara approached cautiously, reaching out to stroke Daisy's velvety nose. "She's beautiful," "She is," Adam agreed, "and patient, which is what you need when you're learning." He proceeded to explain the basics of riding equipment, helping Zara become familiar with the saddle and reins. When it came time to mount, Adam positioned himself beside her. "Put your left foot in the stirrup, grab the saddle horn, and I'll help you up." Zara did as instructed, and with Adam's hands supporting her waist, she swung up onto Daisy's back. The sensation of being so high off the ground was both exhilarating and terrifying. "Relax," Adam advised, looking up at her. "Daisy can sense if you're tense." Zara took a deep breath and tried to loosen her grip on the saddle horn. Adam didn't release his hold on the reins as he walked the horse slowly around the corral, offering guidance on posture and balance. His manner was patient, his instructions clear. After an hour of practice, Zara felt more confident. When Adam suggested they venture a short distance from the corral, she agreed eagerly. He mounted his own horse, a powerful black stallion named Thunder, and led her at a walking pace along a trail that wound around the property. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the landscape, and Zara found herself enchanted by the beauty of the ranch. "How long has your family owned this land?" she asked as they rode side by side along a relatively flat stretch. "My father claimed it in '49 during the gold rush," Adam replied. He didn't strike it rich in the mines, but he had a good eye for land, built the house himself, started with just a few cattle. By the time he died 5 years ago, we had one of the most respected herds in the county. And now you manage it alone, a shadow passed across his face. Since my brother decided city life suited him better. He's a lawyer in San Francisco now. They rode in companionable silence for a while until they reached a rise overlooking a particularly scenic vista. Adam dismounted and helped Zara down from Daisy. "This is my favorite spot on the ranch," he said, gesturing toward the view. "You can see almost the entire property from here." Zara gazed out at the expanse of land, the grazing cattle, the silver ribbon of the creek, the distant mountains. "It's magnificent." "It is," Adam agreed, his voice quiet with pride. "Worth every drop of sweat and blood that's gone into it." As they stood there, Zara became acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the subtle scent of leather and soap that clung to him. When she looked up, she found him watching her with an intensity that made her heart flutter. "Miss Odell, Zara," he said, his voice low, "I hope you know that you're welcome to stay here as long as you wish, not just as an employee." Before she could respond, the sound of approaching hooves made them both turn. One of the ranch hands, a young man named Joe, was riding toward them at a gallop. "Mr. Whitaker," he called. "Riders coming, looks like trouble." Adam's expression hardened instantly. "Get back to the house," he told Zara, helping her quickly onto Daisy. "Tell Mrs. Henderson to ready the shotgun just in case." Fear clutched at Zara's heart. "Who is it? Can't be sure, but given recent events, I have my suspicions." He mounted thunder with fluid grace. "Go now." "I'll handle this." Zara urged Daisy back toward the ranch house, her newfound riding skills tested by the urgency of the situation. Behind her, she heard Adam and Joe riding in the opposite direction, toward the approaching threat. "At the house, Mrs. Henderson was already on the porch, her face grim. "Westfield's men?" she asked as Zara dismounted awkwardly. "Adam thinks it might be," Zara confirmed, her voice shaking slightly. "He said to ready the shotgun." The older woman nodded, reaching for the weapon that was propped just inside the door. "Been expecting this. That man doesn't give up easy when he thinks something belongs to him." Zara felt sick at the thought that she had brought danger to this place, to these people who had shown her nothing but kindness. "This is my fault." "Perhaps I should." "Don't you dare finish that thought," Mrs. Henderson interrupted sharply. "You're not property to be claimed, girl, and Adam knows exactly what he's doing." They watched anxiously as Adam and 3 of his ranch hands confronted the approaching riders at the edge of the property. From this distance, Zara couldn't make out faces, but she counted 5 men, including one whose portly silhouette was unmistakably Mr. Westfield himself. The confrontation lasted several tense minutes, with both groups remaining mounted. Voices were raised, though the words were indistinct. At one point, Adam dismounted and stepped forward, his stance unyielding. Whatever he said caused Mr. Westfield to gesture angrily, but eventually, the Westfield party turned their horses and began to ride away. As Adam and his men returned to the ranch house, Zara felt relief wash over her, followed immediately by guilt and uncertainty. When Adam dismounted and strode toward the porch, his expression was unreadable. "What happened?" Mrs. Henderson asked, still gripping the shotgun. "Westfield claims Miss Odell stole jewelry from his wife," Adam said, his tone making it clear what he thought of the accusation. "Says he has a right to search our property." Zara stepped forward, indignation overcoming her fear. "That's a lie. I took nothing but what belonged to me." Adam nodded. "I know, told him as much." A grim smile touched his lips. "Also told him that the next time he sets foot on my land without invitation, he'd leave with considerably more holes than when he arrived." Mrs. Henderson gave a satisfied nod. "Good. Will that be the end of it?" Zara asked, not daring to hope. Adam's expression turned serious. "Not likely. Men like Westfield don't accept defeat easily, but we'll be ready." He looked directly at Zara. "Unless you'd prefer to move on, I'd understand if you felt safer elsewhere." The thought of leaving, of facing the world alone again, filled Zara with dread. But more than that, she realized with sudden clarity, she didn't want to leave this place. Or this man. "No," she said firmly. "If you'll still have me, I'd like to stay." Something flickered in Adam's eyes, relief perhaps, or something deeper. "Then stay," he said simply, "and we'll face whatever comes together." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ranch, Zara felt a curious sense of belonging. Despite the danger that still loomed, she knew with certainty that she had found something worth fighting for, a place where she was valued, respected, and perhaps, someday, truly loved. The weeks that followed were marked by vigilance, but also by a deepening connection between Zara and the ranch. She continued her riding lessons with Adam, gaining confidence with each outing. Under Mrs. Henderson's guidance, she learned the intricacies of running a household the size of the Whitaker Ranch, from preserving foods for winter to managing the supplies for the bunkhouse where most of the ranch hands lived. One evening in late September, as Zara was preparing supper, Adam entered the kitchen with an envelope in his hand and a troubled expression on his face. "Something wrong?" she asked, setting aside the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables. He hesitated, then extended the envelope to her. "This came for you." Man in town said a fancy lady paid him to deliver it. Zara wiped her hands on her apron before taking the envelope. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably Mrs. Westfield's elegant script. With trepidation, she opened it and unfolded the letter inside. Miss Odell, it began formally, I write to inform you that the allegations against you have been withdrawn. Mr. Westfield has suffered a minor apoplexy and, on the advice of his physician, has agreed to forego all business dealings that might cause undue agitation. This includes the matter concerning you. Zara's hands trembled slightly as she continued reading. I am aware that my husband's behavior toward you was inappropriate, as was my own complicity. For this, I offer no excuse, only the assurance that we will trouble you no further. The letter concluded with a businesslike signature, no apology but a clear indication that the threat had passed. Good news? Adam asked, watching her face carefully. Zara handed him the letter, still processing its implications. It seems Mr. Westfield has been neutralized, at least temporarily. Adam read quickly, his brow furrowing. Apoplexy, that's a stroke, isn't it? A mild one, according to this, Zara confirmed. Mrs. Westfield says they won't pursue me anymore. Adam folded the letter and handed it back to her. Do you believe her? Zara considered the question carefully. Yes, I think I do. Mrs. Westfield values social standing above all else. A public feud would damage that, especially if details of her husband's proclivities became known. Relief washed over Adam's features, followed by something that looked almost like disappointment. Then you're free to go wherever you choose now, no need to hide out on a dusty ranch. The implication caught Zara off guard. Do you want me to leave? No, he answered quickly, then seemed embarrassed by his eagerness. That is, you've become invaluable here. Mrs. Henderson sings your praises daily, and the men would likely revolt if your cooking disappeared. Zara smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. Then I'll stay if you'll have me. A genuine smile transformed Adam's usually serious face. I'd like that very much. Their eyes held for a long moment, the kitchen suddenly filled with a tension that was neither uncomfortable nor unwelcome. Adam took a half step toward her, then stopped as Mrs. Henderson's voice called from the dining room. Zara, dear, do we have any more of that blackberry preserve? The moment broken, Adam stepped back. I'll let you get back to supper preparations, he said, his voice slightly rough. Perhaps we could continue our conversation later. Zara nodded, her cheeks warm. I'd like that. As Adam left the kitchen, Zara turned back to her cooking, her mind swirling with possibilities. For the first time in years, she felt truly free from fear, free to choose her own path. And increasingly, that path seemed intertwined with Adam Whitaker's. That evening, after supper was cleared and Mrs. Henderson had retired to her room, Zara found Adam on the front porch, smoking a pipe as he gazed at the star-filled sky. She hesitated in the doorway, suddenly shy. Join me. He invited, noticing her presence. Zara settled into the chair beside his, drawing her shawl closer against the evening chill. For a while, they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the occasional whinny from the stables, the chorus of crickets. I used to do this with my father, Adam said eventually, his voice quiet in the darkness. Sit out here after a long day, just being still together. You must miss him, Zara observed. Adam nodded. Every day, he was a good man, tough but fair, taught me everything I know about ranching, about being a man of my word. He would be proud of what you've accomplished here. Adam's laugh held a hint of bitterness. Maybe the ranch is smaller than when he ran it, had to sell off the north section 2 years ago after a bad drought. But it survived, Zara pointed out gently. Many didn't. He considered her words, then nodded slowly. That's true enough. He tapped his pipe against the porch railing, emptying the ashes. What about your family, Zara? You've never spoken of them. Zara looked up at the stars, finding it easier to speak of painful things while gazing at their distant beauty. My father was a shopkeeper in Sacramento. My mother helped him run the store. They were good, hard-working people. She swallowed against the tightness in her throat. They both died in a fever epidemic when I was 18. The store went to pay debts I didn't even know we had. Adam's hand found hers in the darkness, his calloused palm warm against her skin. I'm sorry. I went to live with my mother's cousin after that, but she was unkind. When I was 20, I left to find work as a domestic servant. Zara's voice grew quieter. That's when I learned how vulnerable a woman alone can be in this world. Adam's grip on her hand tightened slightly. Not anymore, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You're not alone now. Zara turned to look at him, finding his face half illuminated by the moonlight, his eyes intense as they held hers. Adam, she began, but words failed her. He leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she didn't, he closed the distance between them, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was both gentle and profound. Zara responded with a warmth that surprised her, her free hand moving to rest against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. When they finally parted, Adam rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the day you started standing up to me about how the kitchen should be organized, he admitted with a soft laugh. Zara smiled, remembering their first minor disagreement 2 weeks after her arrival. You were wrong, you know. Flour does not belong anywhere near a wash basin. I bow to your superior knowledge, he said, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand. His expression grew more serious. Zara, I don't want you to feel obligated in any way. Your position here is secure regardless of this. The concern in his voice touched her deeply. I know, she assured him. That's one of the reasons she paused, gathering her courage. One of the reasons I've grown to care for you. The smile that spread across Adam's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Well then, he said softly, that makes 2 of us. As he drew her into another kiss, Zara felt the last of her defenses crumble. Here, under the vast canopy of stars, with the solid presence of Adam beside her, she had found not just safety, but the beginning of something she had almost stopped believing in: love. The change in their relationship was subtle at first: shared glances across the dinner table, fingers brushing when passing items, quiet conversations that stretched late into the evening. Mrs. Henderson observed these developments with knowing eyes, but made no comment beyond an approving nod when she caught Zara smiling to herself while kneading bread. As October painted the surrounding hills with gold and crimson, Adam began including Zara in more aspects of the ranch business. He taught her to track the cattle records, explained his plans for crop rotation in the small fields they used for growing feed, and even sought her opinion on whether to invest in new breeding stock. You have a good head for business, he remarked one evening as they reviewed the ranch ledgers together. Better than mine, I suspect. Zara looked up from the column of figures she'd been calculating. My father taught me about keeping accounts for the store. He believed girls should be educated just as thoroughly as boys. Wise man, Adam said with a smile. The ranch could benefit from your skills if you're interested, that is. The implication wasn't lost on Zara. He wasn't just talking about her employment anymore, but something more permanent. I would be, she replied carefully, her heart quickening. Before Adam could respond, there was a commotion outside, the sound of horses arriving at a gallop and men calling out in urgent tones. Adam was on his feet immediately, moving to the window. Fire, he said grimly, grabbing his coat. Looks like the north pasture. Zara followed him onto the porch where they could see an ominous orange glow on the horizon. Ranch hands were already mounting up, gathering water barrels and tools. Stay here, Adam told her. If it spreads, get Mrs. Henderson and head for the creek. Without waiting for a response, he was gone, riding hard toward the blaze with his men. Zara watched with growing anxiety as the glow intensified. Wildfires were a constant threat in the dry California autumn, capable of destroying a ranch in hours. Mrs. Henderson joined her on the porch, her face tight with concern. This is no accident, she said quietly. That pasture is too far from the trail for a campfire to have spread. Zara turned to her, alarmed. You think someone set it deliberately? The older woman's expression was grim. Wouldn't be the first time someone tried to drive Adam off his land. There are powerful men who have had their eye on this valley for years. As the night wore on, Zara and Mrs. Henderson prepared for the worst, gathering important documents, valuables, and necessities that could be quickly loaded onto a wagon if evacuation became necessary. All the while, Zara's thoughts remained with Adam, fighting the blaze in the darkness. It was nearly dawn when the men returned, exhausted and smoke-stained but triumphant. The fire had been contained before it could reach the main ranch buildings or the majority of the grazing land. Adam found Zara waiting on the porch, a pot of fresh coffee ready. He accepted the cup she offered with grateful hands that were blistered and blackened from the night's work. "You're hurt," she said, noting the angry red mark that ran along his jawline where a spark had caught him. "It's nothing," he assured her, though he didn't resist when she insisted on cleaning and dressing his various burns and cuts. "Mrs. Henderson thinks the fire was set deliberately," Zara said as she worked, her touch gentle against his skin. Adam's expression hardened. "She's right. We found evidence, multiple starting points, too carefully placed to be natural. Who would do such a thing? Could be several candidates. Thompson's been buying up land all around Calico. There's talk of a railroad spur coming through, which would make this valley worth a fortune." He winced slightly as Zara applied salve to his burned hand. "Or it could be the Bartlett brothers from over the ridge. They've had their eyes on our water rights for years." Zara's hand stilled. Could it be the Westfields? Adam considered this. Possible, though it doesn't seem like their style. Westfield prefers legal manipulation to open aggression. Once his injuries were tended, Adam caught Zara's hand in his. "Thank you," he said softly, "for being here, for caring." Zara felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by how close she'd come to losing him, to losing everything they were building together. "I was so afraid," she admitted. Adam drew her into his arms, heedless of his soot-stained clothes. "I know," he murmured against her hair, "but we're all right. The ranch is safe." In the aftermath of the fire, security became a primary concern. Adam stationed men at strategic points around the property and instituted regular patrols. Zara noticed that he seemed more tired, the weight of protecting the ranch and everyone on it visibly heavy on his shoulders. A week after the fire, the truth behind it emerged when Tomas returned from Calico with troubling news. "Thompson's been bragging at the saloon," he reported to Adam, with Zara present at Adam's insistence. "Says you'll be forced to sell before winter, that no one can stand against progress." Adam's jaw tightened. Did he admit to the fire? Tomas shook his head, not directly. But he mentioned that sometimes accidents happen to stubborn ranchers. That evening, Adam was unusually quiet during supper. Afterward, he asked Zara to walk with him, leading her to the small family cemetery where his parents and sister were buried. It was a peaceful spot, shaded by a large oak tree with simple but well-tended markers. "I've been thinking," he said as they stood before the graves, "about what matters most in this life." Zara waited, sensing the importance of his words. "My father built this ranch from nothing, poured his life into this land. I've always felt obligated to continue his legacy." He turned to face her, his expression earnest. "But the fire made me realize something. Land, cattle, buildings, they can all be replaced. People can't." He took both her hands in his. "Zara, I know this isn't conventional. We've known each other only a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Adam knelt before her, still holding her hands. "I love you. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears sprang to Zara's eyes, unexpected joy blooming in her heart. "Yes," she whispered, then more strongly, "Yes, Adam, I will." His smile was radiant as he rose and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that spoke volumes of his love. When they finally parted, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "We'll face whatever comes together, Thompson, fires, droughts, all of it." Zara nodded, feeling a strength and certainty she'd never known before. "Together," she agreed. The following Sunday, they rode into Calico to speak with the minister about their wedding. The small town was busier than Zara remembered, with new construction evident on the main street. As they tied their horses outside the church, a familiar figure emerged from the mercantile across the street, Mrs. Westfield, accompanied by a young woman who appeared to be her niece. The older woman spotted Zara immediately, her face registering surprise. Before Zara could suggest avoiding the encounter, Mrs. Westfield had crossed the street, her expression unreadable. "Miss Odell," she said formally, "I see you've found employment." Adam stepped protectively closer to Zara. "Miss Odell is my fiancée," he corrected, his tone leaving no room for condescension. Mrs. Westfield's eyebrows rose slightly. "Indeed, my congratulations." She hesitated, then added with uncharacteristic sincerity, "Mr. Westfield's health continues to decline." We will be returning to San Francisco permanently next month. Zara felt a weight she hadn't realized she still carried lift from her shoulders. I wish you a safe journey, she said, finding that she meant it. After a moment of awkward silence, Mrs. Westfield nodded and rejoined her niece. As they walked away, Zara heard the young woman ask, "Who was that, Aunt Margaret?" "No one of consequence," came the reply, but without the venom Zara might have expected. Adam squeezed her hand. "Are you all right?" Zara nodded, surprised to find that she truly was. "Yes." That chapter of my life is closed now. Inside the church, Reverend Phillips was welcoming but cautious when they explained their intention to marry. "How long have you known each other?" he asked, peering at them over his spectacles. "Not long enough by conventional standards," Adam admitted. "But we're certain of our feelings." The Reverend considered them thoughtfully. "Love doesn't always follow a timetable, Mr. Whitaker, but marriage is a serious commitment, especially in a place like this where life can be harsh." "We understand that," Zara assured him. "We've already faced challenges together." Eventually, the Reverend agreed to perform the ceremony in 2 weeks' time, recommending they use the interval for careful preparation, both practical and spiritual. As they left the church, Adam suggested they visit the mercantile to begin purchasing supplies for the coming winter. Inside the busy store, they separated Adam to discuss a large order of flour and sugar with the proprietor, and Zara to examine fabric for new curtains. While selecting between calico prints, Zara overheard a conversation between two men near the ammunition display. "Thompson's gotten himself in deep with those railroad investors," one said quietly. "Promised them land he doesn't own yet." "Whitaker's place?" the other asked, among others. "Word is Thompson's running out of time. The investors want results or their money back." Zara moved closer, pretending to examine a shelf of notions. "What's he gonna do?" the second man asked. "Whitaker won't sell, everyone knows that." The first man lowered his voice further. "Heard Thompson hired some men from up north, the kind that don't ask questions and don't leave witnesses." Cold fear washed over Zara. She glanced toward Adam, still engaged in conversation at the counter, unaware of the threat being discussed mere feet away. Before she could decide how to alert him without causing a scene, the bell above the door jangled, and a hush fell over the store. Zara turned to see Thompson himself entering, flanked by two hard-faced men she didn't recognize. The banker's gaze swept the store, settling first on Adam, then, with obvious surprise, on Zara. A calculating expression crossed his face as he noted their presence together. "Mr. Whitaker," he called, his voice falsely jovial. "Just the man I wanted to see." Adam turned, his stance instantly alert. "Thompson," he acknowledged coolly. "I was planning to ride out to your ranch tomorrow," Thompson continued, approaching the counter, "to discuss a business proposition, but since you're here, perhaps we could talk now." "I have nothing to discuss with you," Adam replied evenly, "especially after the fire." Thompson's face registered brief surprise, quickly masked. "Fire? I heard about that terrible thing, but surely you don't think I know exactly what to think," Adam interrupted. "And my answer remains the same. The Whitaker Ranch is not for sale, not to you or any of your investors." The two men accompanying Thompson shifted subtly, their hands moving closer to their holstered guns. Zara felt her heart race as she edged closer to Adam, unwilling to leave him alone in what was rapidly becoming a dangerous situation. Thompson noticed her movement and smiled thinly. "Miss Odell, isn't it? I'm surprised to see you in such elevated company given your previous position." Before Zara could respond, Adam stepped forward, placing himself between her and Thompson. "Miss Odell is my fiancée," he said, his voice hard, "and any disrespect toward her will be answered by me personally." The store had gone utterly silent, everyone watching the confrontation unfold. Thompson's face flushed red, but before he could respond, the town sheriff entered, his arrival perhaps prompted by a concerned onlooker. "Everything all right in here?" Sheriff Davis asked, his hand resting casually on his holstered gun as he assessed the situation. Thompson forced a smile. "Just a friendly business discussion, Sheriff." "Didn't sound too friendly from outside," the sheriff remarked dryly. He nodded to Adam. "Whitaker." "Sheriff," Adam acknowledged, "Miss Odell and I were just concluding our purchases." The tension in the store gradually dissipated as Thompson, recognizing the shift in advantage, backed down. "Another time, perhaps," he said to Adam, though his eyes conveyed a clear threat. With a curt nod, he and his men departed. Once their purchases were complete and loaded onto their wagon, Adam and Zara headed back toward the ranch, both lost in thought about the confrontation. "Those men with Thompson," Zara finally said, breaking the silence. "I overheard someone in the store say he hired them from up north. That they're dangerous." Adam's expression was grim. "I'm not surprised. Thompson's desperate. The railroad deal is his last chance to make a fortune before the silver mines play out completely." "What will we do?" Adam reached across the wagon seat to take her hand. "We'll be vigilant. Alert the men and proceed with our wedding plans." His voice softened. "I won't let Thompson or anyone else intimidate us out of the future we're building." Zara squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his determination. As they crested the hill that overlooked the Whitaker ranch, the sight of the place she now considered home filled her with resolve. She had escaped one threat to her freedom and happiness. She would not surrender to another. Whatever Thompson was planning, they would face it together, not just as rancher and maid, but as partners, equal in their commitment to each other, and to the life they were creating on this land they both loved. The 2 weeks before the wedding were filled with both joyful preparation and watchful vigilance. Zara and Mrs. Henderson sewed a simple but elegant wedding dress from cream-colored fabric purchased in calico. Adam's men patrolled the ranch boundaries day and night, alert for any sign of trouble from Thompson or his hired guns. 3 days before the wedding, a letter arrived from Adam's brother in San Francisco, expressing surprise at the hasty engagement but offering cautious congratulations. "William always did prefer city comforts to ranch life," Adam explained as they read the letter together. "But he's a good man at heart." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and crisp, with the promise of a beautiful late October day. Zara stood at her bedroom window, watching the sun rise over the mountains and reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. A soft knock at her door preceded Mrs. Henderson's entrance. The older woman carried a small wooden box, her eyes suspiciously bright. "I have something for you, dear," she said, placing the box in Zara's hands. "These belong to Adam's mother, Elizabeth. She would have wanted you to have them today." Inside the box lay a delicate pearl necklace and matching earrings, simple but elegant. Zara gasped softly, "They're beautiful." "But are you sure Adam would?" "It was his idea," Mrs. Henderson assured her. "He asked me to give them to you this morning, said he wanted you to have a piece of his family with you as you became part of it." Tears welled in Zara's eyes as she carefully lifted the necklace. "Will you help me put it on?" As Mrs. Henderson fastened the clasp, Zara caught sight of her reflection in the mirror, her hair arranged in soft curls, the cream-colored dress complementing her fair skin, and now Elizabeth Whitaker's pearls gracing her neck. She hardly recognized herself. So far removed was this image from the frightened maid who had fled Calico months ago. The ceremony itself was small but meaningful, held in the front parlor of the Whitaker home with Reverend Phillips officiating. Ranch hands and a few trusted neighbors from surrounding properties gathered to witness the union. Tomas served as Adam's best man, while Mrs. Henderson stood with Zara. When Adam first saw Zara descending the staircase, his expression of wonder and love was something she knew she would remember for the rest of her life. He looked handsome in his best suit, his usually tousled hair neatly combed, his eyes never leaving hers as she approached. The Reverend spoke of commitment, of weathering life's storms together, words that held special meaning for a couple who had already faced significant challenges. When it came time for their vows, Adam took Zara's hands in his voice steady and sure. "I, Adam James Whitaker, take you, Zara Elizabeth Odell, to be my lawful wedded wife. I promise to love, honor, and protect you in plenty and in want, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, as long as we both shall live." Zara's voice trembled slightly with emotion as she repeated her own vows, but her conviction was unwavering. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, and Adam leaned down to seal their union with a tender kiss, applause erupted from their gathered friends. The celebration that followed was joyful, with plenty of food, music from a fiddle played by one of the ranch hands, and dancing that continued well into the evening. As dusk fell, lanterns were lit in the yard, casting a warm glow over the festivities. During a quiet moment, as they stood together watching their guests enjoy the celebration, Adam slipped his arm around Zara's waist. "Happy Mrs. Whitaker," he murmured against her ear. The sound of her new name sent a thrill through Zara. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly, turning to face him. "Thank you for finding me that day in Calico." "I think perhaps we found each other," Adam said, his eyes reflecting the lantern light, "and I thank God every day that we did." Later that night, after their guests had departed and the ranch house had settled into silence, Zara discovered that love could be both tender and passionate, gentle and overwhelming. In the privacy of what was now their shared bedroom, she and Adam explored their new intimacy with a blend of eagerness and reverence that left them both breathless. Afterward, as they lay wrapped in each other's arms, the moonlight spilling through the window across their bed, Adam traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "I never thought I could feel this way about anyone," he admitted softly. "After Abigail died and then my parents, I convinced myself that focusing on the ranch was enough." Zara propped herself up on one elbow to look at him, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. "And now," his smile was tender in the dim light. "Now I know that all the land and cattle in California wouldn't mean a thing without you to share it with." She leaned down to kiss him, marveling at how natural it felt, how right. "I love you, Adam Whitaker," she whispered against his lips. His arms tightened around her, drawing her closer. "And I love you, Zara Whitaker, now and always." In the days that followed, they settled into married life with a happiness that seemed to infuse everything around them. Zara took on her role as the rancher's wife with the same determination and care she had shown as a maid, but now with the added confidence of being a true partner in the enterprise. Adam, for his part, consulted her on decisions both large and small, valuing her practical intelligence and intuition. Together they planned improvements to the ranch, a new storage barn, expanded vegetable gardens, additional grazing land to the west. A month after their wedding, Adam surprised Zara with a trip into San Francisco, ostensibly to visit his brother William, but also to celebrate their marriage with a proper honeymoon. The city was a whirlwind of experiences for Zara, who had never ventured beyond the small towns of California's interior. William Whitaker welcomed them to his comfortable home in the fashionable Nob Hill district, where he lived with his wife, Catherine, and their young son. Though initially reserved, William warmed considerably to Zara when he observed the obvious happiness she had brought his brother. "I haven't seen Adam smile this much since we were boys," he remarked to her one evening while they watched Adam and Catherine discussing a book they had both read. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," Zara laughed softly. "I think it works both ways. He saved me as much as I saved him." Their week in San Francisco was filled with theater performances, fine dining, shopping, and sightseeing. Adam delighted in showing Zara the city's attractions, from the bustling wharves to the elegant department stores. For her birthday, which fell during their visit, he presented her with a beautiful gold locket containing miniature portraits of both of them, commissioned from a photographer on Market Street. On their final evening in the city, as they prepared to return to the ranch the next morning, William approached Adam with a serious expression. "I've heard troubling news," he said, drawing his brother aside while Zara helped Catherine put young James to bed. Zara returned to find the brothers deep in conversation, their voices low and expressions grave. When they noticed her presence, Adam motioned for her to join them. "William's been making inquiries about Thompson," he explained, his arm slipping protectively around her waist. "It seems our banker friend has more enemies than friends these days." William nodded, his lawyer's precision evident in his explanation. "Thompson's investors are losing patience. The railroad deal is falling apart without the land he promised them, your land being the most critical piece." "How does this affect us?" Zara asked, feeling a chill of apprehension. "It means Thompson is more dangerous than ever," Adam replied grimly. "A desperate man will take desperate measures." William leaned forward, his voice dropping further. "I've arranged for additional security to accompany you back to the ranch tomorrow. Former Pinkerton agents I've worked with professionally, they'll remain at the ranch until this situation is resolved. Resolved how? Adam questioned. I've also been in contact with the territorial governor, William explained. There's enough evidence of Thompson's questionable business practices to warrant an investigation. It's being handled quietly for now, but with sufficient testimony. The next morning, as they prepared to depart, two capable-looking men introduced themselves as Martin and Collins, the security William had arranged. They would travel with Adam and Zara back to the ranch and remain there as new hands until the threat from Thompson was neutralized. The journey back was uneventful, but Zara could sense Adam's increased vigilance, his eyes constantly scanning the landscape, his hand never far from his holstered gun. The peaceful honeymoon interlude was over. Reality awaited them at the Whitaker ranch. Upon their return, they found the ranch operating smoothly under Tomas's capable management, but with a tension in the air that spoke of ongoing concerns about security. Mrs. Henderson greeted them warmly, though Zara noticed the shotgun propped discreetly by the kitchen door. There have been strangers asking questions in town, Mrs. Henderson reported as she served coffee in the kitchen. About the ranch, about when you'd be returning. Adam exchanged glances with Martin and Collins, who nodded in silent understanding. Double the night patrols, Adam instructed. No one rides alone, even during daylight. That night, as they lay in bed discussing the situation, Zara voiced the question that had been troubling her. What if Thompson never gives up? What if we have to live like this indefinitely, always watching, always waiting? Adam pulled her closer, his chin resting on top of her head. He will give up one way or another. William's legal maneuvering, combined with the governor's investigation, will eventually corner him. Men like Thompson survive on reputation and connections. Once those are threatened, they typically fold. And if he doesn't, Zara persisted, Adam was quiet for a long moment, then we'll consider other options. William has offered us a place in San Francisco until things settle, or we could look at ranches in other territories. Zara raised herself up to look at him in the darkness. You would leave, after everything your family built here. His hand came up to cup her cheek. What my father built was a legacy, yes, but not just of land and cattle. He built a legacy of values of family, of doing what's right, of protecting what matters most. Adam's voice was soft but determined. You matter most, Zara. If keeping you safe means leaving this place, then that's what we'll do. The depth of his love, expressed in his willingness to sacrifice the ranch that had been his life's work, moved Zara profoundly. She leaned down to kiss him, pouring all her emotion into the gesture. I love you for saying that, she whispered, but this is our home, we'll fight for it together. The confrontation they had been anticipating came 3 days later, but not in the form they expected. Zara was in the kitchen garden, harvesting the last of the season's vegetables, when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Looking up, she saw a lone rider, a woman, to her surprise, coming toward the house. Zara straightened, shielding her eyes against the sun as the rider drew closer. With a shock of recognition, she realized it was Mrs. Thompson, the banker's wife, whom she had seen occasionally in calico but never spoken with. Adam emerged from the barn, alerted by the arrival, with Martin close behind him. They approached the rider cautiously. Mrs. Thompson, Adam greeted her, his tone neutral. This is unexpected. The woman dismounted with practiced grace, her expression strained. Mr. Whitaker. Mrs. Whitaker, she acknowledged, including Zara with a nod. I apologize for arriving unannounced, but I needed to speak with you urgently and privately. Adam glanced at Martin, who maintained a discreet distance while staying vigilant. Let's talk inside, he suggested, offering Mrs. Thompson his arm to escort her to the house. In the parlor, with coffee served by a curious Mrs. Henderson, Mrs. Thompson came directly to the point. My husband is planning to move against you tonight, she said, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. He has hired dangerous men, to force you off this property by any means necessary. Zara exchanged an alarmed look with Adam. Why are you telling us this? She asked the woman, Mrs. Thompson's composed facade cracked slightly. Because I cannot bear to have more blood on my conscience, she said quietly. There was a young man, a rancher near Carson City. He refused to sell to my husband last year. There was an accident. Her voice broke on the word. His wife was widowed with 3 small children. Adam's expression hardened. "And you did nothing then?" "I was a coward," Mrs. Thompson admitted. "I told myself it wasn't my concern, that my husband's business dealings were his own affair." She looked directly at Zara. "But then I saw you in town, Miss Odell, Mrs. Whitaker now. I remembered how you fled the Westfields, how rumor had it my husband was involved in that ugly business too." She shook her head. "I could not stand by again." "How many men?" Adam asked, his mind already turning to defense. "6, including 2 who have killed before." Mrs. Thompson withdrew a folded paper from her reticule. "These are their names and what I know of their plans. They intend to approach from the north after midnight." Adam took the paper, his expression grave. "You understand that by warning us, you're betraying your husband." Mrs. Thompson stood, straightening her shoulders. "My husband betrayed everything I thought our marriage stood for long ago. I'm merely trying to prevent more tragedy." She moved toward the door. "I should return before my absence is noted. What you do with this information is, of course, your decision." After she departed, Adam immediately gathered the ranch hands along with Martin and Collins to develop a defense strategy. Zara insisted on being included in the planning, refusing to be sheltered from the reality of their situation. "I want the women and non-combatants to take refuge at the Lawsons' place," Adam announced, referring to a neighboring ranch 5 miles to the south. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm staying," Zara interrupted firmly. "This is my home too, and I won't be sent away while you defend it." Adam started to object, but something in her expression stopped him. "Zara, it's going to be dangerous. These men won't hesitate to. I know exactly what men like that are capable of," she said quietly. "All the more reason I won't leave you to face them alone." After a tense moment, Adam nodded. "All right, but you stay in the house with Mrs. Henderson. Both of you know how to use the shotguns. If anyone tries to enter, we'll be ready," Mrs. Henderson assured him grimly. The rest of the day was spent in preparation. The cattle were moved to the southern pastures, away from the expected direction of attack. Strategic positions were established around the ranch house and barn, with clear lines of fire and predetermined signals. Collins, with his Pinkerton background, provided valuable tactical advice. As dusk fell, a tense quiet settled over the Whitaker ranch. Adam came to find Zara in their bedroom, where she was loading shells into a shotgun with steady hands. "You should try to rest," he suggested, though he knew she was unlikely to sleep. Zara set the shotgun aside and crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her head against his chest. "I keep thinking about that day in Calico," she said softly, "when you offered me your hand and pulled me onto your horse. You didn't hesitate, even knowing it might bring trouble." Adam's arms tightened around her. "Best decision I ever made," he murmured into her hair. She looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Promise me you'll be careful tonight." "I promise." He sealed the words with a kiss that conveyed everything they couldn't say aloud: the fear, the love, the fierce determination to protect what they had built together. Midnight came and passed with no sign of the promised attack. The men maintained their vigilance, rotating positions to stay alert. In the kitchen, Zara and Mrs. Henderson kept coffee brewing and bread baking, providing sustenance during the long night watch. It was nearly 2 in the morning when the first shot rang out, followed immediately by the alarm call from one of the outlying guards. Zara's heart leapt into her throat as Adam grabbed his rifle and headed for the door. "Remember, stay inside, keep away from the windows," he instructed before disappearing into the darkness. The ensuing gunfight was chaotic, with muzzle flashes illuminating the night and shouts echoing across the ranch yard. From her position near a small window, Zara could see shadowy figures moving between buildings, hear the crack of rifles and the occasional cry of pain. Beside her, Mrs. Henderson clutched her own shotgun, her face set in determined lines. "They won't take this ranch," she said firmly, "not while there's breath in our bodies." A sudden crash from the back of the house made them both whirl around. Heavy footsteps moved through the kitchen, followed by a man's voice, unfamiliar and threatening. "Check upstairs," the voice commanded. "Find the women. Thompson wants them as leverage." Mrs. Henderson nodded to Zara, both of them taking up positions to defend the staircase. When two men appeared in the hallway, they found themselves facing the barrels of two shotguns held by grimly determined women. "Not another step," Mrs. Henderson warned, her voice steady despite her age. "These are loaded with buckshot, gentlemen, enough to cut a man in half at this distance." The men hesitated, clearly not having expected armed resistance from the women. In that moment of uncertainty, the back door burst open again and Adam appeared, his rifle raised. "Drop your weapons," he ordered, his voice like steel. "Now." The confrontation ended quickly, with the intruders surrendering rather than facing fire from three directions. As Adam secured their weapons, Zara heard more shooting outside, followed by shouts that suggested the tide had turned against the attackers. By dawn, it was over. Thompson's hired guns had been defeated, with 2 wounded, 1 killed, and the rest captured. Among the ranch defenders, there were minor injuries but no fatalities, a testament to their preparation and the element of surprise they had maintained thanks to Mrs. Thompson's warning. Sheriff Davis arrived mid-morning with a posse from Calico, having been alerted by a rider Adam had dispatched once the fighting was over. The captured men were taken into custody, and statements were collected from everyone at the ranch. "This should be enough to finish Thompson," the sheriff commented as he prepared to depart. "Between these fellas' testimony and the evidence your brother has gathered, Mr. Whitaker, I reckon the banker's days of terrorizing honest folk are numbered." As the last of the posse disappeared down the road, Adam found Zara on the porch, watching the sun rise higher over their land they had fought for and defended together. "It's over," he said softly, coming to stand beside her. "Really over this time." Zara leaned against him, exhausted but relieved. "What happens now?" Adam's arm circled her shoulders. Now we live, Mrs. Whitaker. We build our home, raise our family, tend our land." He turned her to face him, his eyes warm with love and promise. "We make every day count." As he bent to kiss her, Zara knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she belonged, not as a frightened maid with nowhere to turn, but as a woman who had found her strength, her voice, and her heart in the arms of a cowboy who had changed her life forever. The year that followed the confrontation with Thompson was one of growth and prosperity for the Whitaker Ranch. True to the sheriff's prediction, the banker faced serious legal consequences once his criminal activities came to light. Thompson was eventually convicted of multiple charges, including attempted murder and land fraud, and sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison. With the threat removed, Adam and Zara were free to focus on developing their property and their life together. The spring of 1884 brought abundant rainfall, resulting in lush grazing land and healthy calves that promised to increase the ranch's prosperity significantly. In April, as the hills surrounding the ranch exploded with wildflowers, Zara shared news that brought Adam even greater joy than the thriving herd or the expanding acreage. She was expecting their first child. "Are you certain?" he asked, his voice hushed with wonder as they stood together in the garden she had expanded considerably since their marriage. Zara nodded, her hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "Dr. Morgan confirmed it yesterday when I went into town. The baby should arrive in late November." Adam let out a whoop of joy that startled the chickens pecking nearby, lifting Zara into a gentle spin that made her laugh out loud. When he set her down, his expression was a mixture of elation and concern. "Are you feeling well? Should you be resting?" "What does the doctor say about?" Zara silenced him with a kiss. "I'm perfectly healthy, and Dr. Morgan says there's no reason I can't continue my normal activities for now." She smiled at his obvious worry. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, Adam. I'm not made of porcelain." Despite her reassurances, Adam insisted on hiring additional help for the household, bringing in a young woman named Jenny from Calico to assist with the heavier chores. Mrs. Henderson, now fully recovered from her broken ankle but showing signs of her advancing age, was delighted to have both the help and the company. As Zara's pregnancy progressed, her body changing to accommodate the growing life within, she found herself reflecting often on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this point. From a frightened maid fleeing abuse to a confident woman helping to run a prosperous ranch, the transformation sometimes felt like something from a storybook. On a warm evening in August, as she and Adam sat on the porch enjoying the cooler air after a hot summer day, Zara voiced these thoughts. "Sometimes I can hardly believe how much my life has changed in just over a year," she said, her hand resting on her now visible baby bump. "If you hadn't been at those stables that morning—" Adam took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "I believe we would have found each other somehow." "Some things are meant to be," Zara smiled, touched by his romantic notion. "Perhaps, but I'm grateful it happened the way it did, even with all the challenges we faced." "Speaking of challenges," Adam said, shifting to face her more directly, "I received a letter from William today. He and Catherine would like to visit after the baby is born. They've offered to stay through Christmas." "That would be wonderful," Zara replied sincerely. She had grown fond of Adam's brother and his family during their visit to San Francisco. "And it will give them a chance to meet their niece or nephew." Adam's expression softened as he placed his hand gently on her stomach. "Do you have a preference? Boy or girl?" Zara covered his hand with her own. "A healthy child is all I wish for. Though I confess, I sometimes imagine a little boy with your blue eyes and determined chin." "Whereas I picture a little girl with your courage and spirit," Adam countered with a smile. "Either way, this child will be loved beyond measure." As autumn painted the landscape in gold and amber, Zara's preparations for the baby intensified. The room adjacent to theirs was transformed into a nursery, with a cradle crafted by Adam himself, quilts sewn by Mrs. Henderson, and a rocking chair that had belonged to Adam's mother. November arrived with an unusual cold snap, bringing frost to the valley earlier than expected. Zara, now in her final weeks of pregnancy, found herself increasingly restless, eager for the birth yet apprehensive about the unknown experience ahead. On the morning of November 24th, as the first light of dawn was just beginning to illuminate the eastern sky, Zara woke to the unmistakable sensation of her waters breaking. She roused Adam, who went from deep sleep to complete alertness in seconds. "It's time," she told him, remarkably calm despite the flutter of anticipation in her chest. "Send someone for Dr. Morgan." The next 12 hours were a blur of pain, determination, and ultimately profound joy. Dr. Morgan arrived promptly, having arranged to stay in Calico for the final weeks of Zara's pregnancy. Mrs. Henderson and Jenny provided additional support, while Adam remained by Zara's side throughout, his steady presence anchoring her through the waves of labor. Just as the sun was setting, casting a rosy glow through the bedroom window, Zara gave the final push that brought their son into the world. The sound of his lusty cry filled the room, bringing tears of relief and happiness to both new parents. "You have a fine, healthy boy, Mrs. Whitaker, Doctor," Morgan announced, cleaning and swaddling the infant before placing him in Zara's eager arms. Adam leaned close, his face awestruck as he gazed at his son. "He's perfect," he whispered, one finger gently tracing the baby's tiny features, just like his mother. Exhausted but exhilarated, Zara looked down at the small face cradled against her breast. "Hello, James," she said softly, using the name they had chosen to honor Adam's father. "Welcome to the world." In the days that followed, the Whitaker household adjusted to the presence of its newest member. James proved to be a good-natured baby, with his father's blue eyes and a dusting of dark hair that promised to be as rich and wavy as his mother's. William and Catherine arrived a week after the birth, bringing young James Jr., now nearly 6, and a wealth of gifts for their new nephew. The house filled with the warmth of family, of shared meals and stories, of plans for the future on Christmas Eve. With a light snow falling outside a rare treat in their part of California, the extended Whitaker family gathered in the parlor. The tree was decorated with paper ornaments, candles, and strings of popcorn and berries that young James Jr. had helped create. As they exchanged gifts, Adam presented Zara with a small, carefully wrapped package. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 2 charms, a miniature cowboy hat, and a tiny house key. "The hat represents the day we met," he explained as he fastened it around her wrist, "and the key stands for the home we've built together." Tears welled in Zara's eyes at the thoughtfulness of the gift. "It's beautiful," she said, leaning to kiss him softly. "Thank you." Later, after the others had retired and baby James was sleeping peacefully in his cradle, Adam and Zara stood by the window, watching the snow continue to fall. "I have a confession," Adam said, his arm around her waist. "That day in Calico, when I first offered you a place here, I wasn't just being kind. There was something about you, even then. Something that made me feel like I'd found a piece of myself I didn't know was missing." Zara turned in his embrace to look up at him. "I felt it too," she admitted. "Fear told me not to trust it, but my heart knew better." Adam brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle. "This past year has been the happiest of my life, despite all the challenges. You and James, you're everything to me." "And you to us," Zara replied softly. She glanced toward the cradle where their son slept, then back to her husband's beloved face. "From a maid with nowhere to turn to the mistress of Whitaker Ranch with a family of my own. Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life." Adam's smile was tender as he drew her closer. "Believe it, Mrs. Whitaker, this is only the beginning." As they sealed the promise with a kiss, Zara knew that he was right. Their story, which had begun with a desperate flight and an outstretched hand, was not ending but continuing to unfold, rich with possibility, secure in love, and blessed beyond measure. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the Whitaker Ranch in pristine white, while inside, in the warm circle of their home, a family that had been forged through courage, compassion, and commitment looked forward to all the chapters yet to be written in their shared life. Years passed, and the Whitaker Ranch prospered under Adam and Zara's stewardship. James grew from a sturdy toddler into an active boy with his father's love of the land and his mother's thoughtful nature. 2 years after his birth, he was joined by a sister, Elizabeth, named for Adam's mother. 3 years after that, the family welcomed another son, Thomas. By 1890, the ranch had expanded considerably, with additional acreage, improved breeding stock, and modern improvements that made it one of the most progressive operations in the region. Adam's innovative approach to cattle raising, combined with Zara's sharp business acumen, had transformed the struggling property into a model of success. On the 10th anniversary of the day Zara had arrived at the ranch, Adam surprised her with a party attended by neighbors, friends, and family members who had traveled from as far as San Francisco for the occasion. The house and yard were decorated with lanterns and flowers, tables laden with food prepared under Mrs. Henderson's supervision, though the aging housekeeper now directed rather than cooked, and musicians hired from Calico providing lively tunes for dancing. 10 years, Adam mused as he and Zara took a moment alone together on the porch, watching their guests enjoy the celebration. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I found you in town. Other times it's as though you've always been here." Zara leaned against him, contentment warming her from within. "The best 10 years of my life," she said honestly. At 32, she had grown into her confidence and position, respected throughout the county not just as Adam Whitaker's wife, but as a woman of substance in her own right. The sound of childish laughter drew their attention to the yard, where 8-year-old James was teaching his sister Elizabeth, now 6, a simple dance step while Thomas, 3, clapped his hands in delight. The sight of their children healthy, happy, and secure filled Zara with profound gratitude. "We've been blessed," Adam said softly, following her gaze. "We have," she agreed, then added with a smile, "though some of those blessings we worked hard for." Adam laughed, pulling her closer. "That we did, Mrs. Whitaker, that we did." As the evening progressed, William Whitaker, now a prominent judge in San Francisco, raised a toast to his brother and sister-in-law. "To Adam and Zara," he said, his voice carrying across the assembled guests, "who taught us all that the greatest fortunes aren't measured in gold or silver, but in love, courage, and the family we build together." Glasses were raised amid calls of "hear, hear." Zara felt a rush of emotion as she looked around at the life they had created, not just the property and possessions, but the community of people who had become part of their extended family. There was Mrs. Henderson, now in her 70s but still sharp as a tack, bouncing young Thomas on her knee. There were the ranch hands, many of whom had been with them for years, loyal to the Whitakers not just for the fair wages but for the respect with which they were treated. There were neighbors who had stood with them during difficult times and celebrated with them in good ones. And there, at the center of it all, was Adam, her partner, her love, her champion. The cowboy who had truly turned her life around when she had nowhere left to turn. Later that night, with the guests departed and the children tucked into bed, Zara and Adam stood on the porch once more, looking out at the stars that sparkled over their land. "I have something for you," Adam said, reaching into his pocket. "A 10th anniversary gift." He placed a small leather pouch in her palm. Inside, Zara found a gold charm to add to the bracelet he had given her that first Christmas, a tiny, perfectly crafted number 10 intertwined with a heart. "It's beautiful," she said, holding it up to catch the moonlight. Adam took the bracelet from her wrist and carefully attached the new charm alongside the others that had been added over the years, the cowboy hat and house key joined by a baby booty for each child. A small book representing the school Zara had helped establish in Calico. A miniature cow marking the year their breeding program had won regional recognition. "I plan to keep adding to this," he said as he refastened the bracelet, "for the next 10 years and the 10 after that, and as long as we're together." Zara looked up at him, this man who had saved her and then shown her how to save herself. "I love you, Adam Whitaker," she said simply. More with each passing day. His smile, still boyish despite the strands of silver now appearing at his temples, warmed her heart. "And I love you, Zara Whitaker. Always have, always will." As they sealed their recommitment with a tender kiss, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them here from a desperate escape to a life richer and more fulfilling than she could ever have imagined. There had been challenges along the way, moments of fear and uncertainty, but never once had she regretted taking Adam's outstretched hand that fateful morning in Calico. The maid who had nowhere left to turn had found not just shelter but a home, not just safety but strength, not just a protector but a partner. And in doing so, she had helped create something beautiful and enduring, a legacy of love that would continue to flourish long after they were gone, carried forward by their children and someday their children's children. As they walked hand in hand back into the house they had made into a home, Zara knew that their story, which had begun with courage and compassion, would continue to unfold, page by page, year by year, blessing by blessing, for all the days of their lives. And in the end, that was the greatest happily ever after she could imagine, not a conclusion, but a continuation, rich with possibility, secure in love, and more precious with each passing day.